It was actually your dad was the one. I did a autograph session with him at Burgess Chevrolet and chatted with your dad, but that was about it, just from the autograph thing. And we had 3 different shops. I didn't have a phone in one shop. My ma comes out there and says, "Guy on the phone for you." I said, "Who is it?" He says, "It's Earnhardt." And I thought, okay, just say, I'm sure you heard these stories 100 times, right? I'm like, yeah, whatever. About an hour and a half later, he called back again. And then he was like, "Benson, Earnhardt." And I started laughing. And he goes, "I want you to drive my car at Dover." He was pretty short because he's, "All right, I'll have my people get a hold of your people." And I go, "I don't have people."
Hey everybody, it's Dale Jr. back again for another episode of the Dale Jr. Download. Our guest segment today presented to you by Arby's and their new Meat in 3 box. Get more meal for your money at Arby's. We have the meats. We also have a great guest for you today. Johnny Benson's coming on the show. Johnny has raced in NASCAR at the truck level, the rally, or the Busch level. At the cup level, he's raced short tracks his entire life. I learned a lot in preparing for this and reading through our notes. Bobby Marcos and the team put together a great sort of scope of his life and career. One thing that's interesting for me is that his dad was a very successful racer. I want to talk about that because I learned a lot about his dad reading books. And then Johnny, his career path was, kind of accelerated, clunky, start-stop. How he got into the rally or the Busch Series and was really successful and then yanked out of there in the Cup Series, and that struggled for a while, and he never really landed into a great situation until his opportunity at Bill Davis Racing in the Truck Series. So we want to talk about all that, but also a short track racer through and through. Started at the short tracks, still races at the short tracks. He's recently announced that he is completely retired. I don't believe it. We're going to talk about that and more. Let's bring Johnny in the room. All right, Johnny Benson Jr. on the Dale Jr. Download, man. It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
Great to be here. Watch the show all the time. So.
Yeah, awesome. Looking at your story, I mean, I was, a witness to a lot of it, but looking back at your past with more detail, it's really remarkable. All the different avenues that you got to go down and got to experience. First off, though, I wanted to talk briefly about your dad. I knew that your father raced, but I never knew much about his career, and somebody handed me a book of the classic at Oswego. And it's I'm sure you've seen this book, but it's got a nice it's a history of the classic, which is a super modified race, the biggest maybe super modified race in the country at Oswego, and it does a really good job of sort of going race by race, giving you a kind of a couple paragraphs on how the race played out and who finished where, and you learn about all these incredible names that raced in that race and raced in super modifieds, and your dad was one of them. So, what do you recall, I guess, growing up around race cars? What's your first memory of being in the shop or seeing a car? What car was it?
Well, when I first started in the shop, I was probably 7 years old, but I remember being 4 or 5 when my dad did have super modified, and it was down there, and of course every kid wants to sit in it, so obviously I did that. So when he won the classic, which was a 66, I was only 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And so obviously I wasn't there, but I did get a chance to see him run them, but I was so young, there's a lot of it I don't remember.
Yep.
And then as he got into the late model aspect of things, that's when I worked in a shop. I mean, I started at 7 years old in a shop and just worked on his cars all that time. He won multiple races, multiple championships at Berlin. I mean, there's nobody better around Berlin than him. But then he did start to run a super modified again back when Sammy Sessions raced for Dawker Motorsports there, and he got killed, I think, snowmobile racing or something. They asked my dad to drive it. That was probably the time that I remember him running a super modified and going to the races, and I was probably 12, 13 at that point in time. And that was probably my first introduction to the supers was at age that I can remember, and a pretty cool race car.
They're crazy. Just learning through that book about the classic itself, the evolution of those cars is fascinating.
I think, when he went there, he always talked about that they were starting to bring in the roadsters from the Indy cars, and then he built what we would call a wedge car back in that day. And I just remember hearing the story. So he went out and qualified, and he was fast. Well, I don't remember what the bracket was, whether it was 20 seconds or 19, whatever that bracket was. He's the first one into that bracket. And they said, nobody can go that fast. It made him requalify 3 times. So he kept working on that car, kept going faster. And I thought that was kind of funny. And then he won the race. And I can't tell you how many times that when we used to race Watkins Glen, people would always ask me, is that your dad? And I said, yep, it is. And it doesn't matter where you go up in that end of the country. I get asked that every time and still do today.
Yeah. When did you decide that you wanted to become a driver?
That actually happened kind of weird because I was working in a shop and, just welding parts, things of that nature. And I started building chassis. I think I built my first chassis from the ground up when I was 13. Well, I was must have been 18. My dad quit racing. And, he had a couple of wrecks and he was like, I'm done with this. And at that point in time, I'm like, who's going to race for the company? And so that's when I actually decided. But I built a dirt car. We were selling both dirt and asphalt cars. So I went and ran dirt for 3 years, but I started just because he had quit. And in my head is like, well, who's going to race for the business? So that's when I said, all right, I'll build a car and go.
Yeah. So what kind of dirt car was it?
Like what they would call the World Outlaw late models.
Really?
Back in that
wedge
day.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did you race?
Started off like at Ionia Speedway, then it was Thunderbird Speedway and over in Muskegon, and then Ionia Speedway, or I-96, I'm sorry. And I ran there, and then we toured around a little bit, not too far. I don't think my dad really cared for the travel much, but there's a lot of times I would just go and do it. But pretty much stayed there. I did go down and run the World 100 once, I think, on my second year of racing. I fell one car short of making a race, and it was my own stupidity. I was good in the heat race, but in Michigan, it's like when they throw the green on a restart, we usually do it in 3 and 4. Down there, they start in turn 2 while I was sleeping.
Yeah.
And I went from I think I'd finished in top 5. I was running 4th. Well, then I'm 8th. I made it back up to 5th, and I was one car short.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know they were going to start in the middle of backstrap or coming off too. So I got caught sleeping.
So, you're one of the things that I love about you is that you're proficient in building cars. You're cars probably as good as you can drive them.
Yeah.
You talked about building a chassis at 13 years old. How valuable was all of that knowledge for you as a driver early on, right? You're trying to, I can't imagine, right? When I started driving race cars, I didn't know anything about setting them up. I knew what I was looking at when I looked at parts and pieces, but I really didn't know how to I didn't know how to, change the geometry on my street stock car to make it turn better or, little things like that. But how valuable was that information for you?
Oh, it's huge. Obviously I had a great teacher, so I felt like every time that I built a car, it was pretty close to start with because of my dad. He knew where things needed to go. So I think in the beginning, I really didn't understand it, but because with his direction, everything was good. Most of the cars I've raced until I moved down here, I built. And that was, I think that's the most satisfying thing, to build a car and make it go faster. Okay, I don't think there's anything much better than that. Coming down here, of course, that's a little different story. But so I don't know if you said when that time when I finally actually understood it, but it was early on that I understood the adjustment that we're making and what they were going to do. Now, some of it, if I'd started off blank and trying to figure out exactly what those measurements are, that's obviously the hardest part. But we had a good starting point, I think, when I raced.
Yeah.
And so we were never that far off. But still, that extra, that extra to get to go win a race is very complicated.
Yeah, for sure. When did you decide, that you wanted to move to Asphalt? What was that option? What was that opportunity like?
It was, I think my dad wasn't happy because I wanted to run dirt. He wanted me to run asphalt. So he gave me a little leeway on that, but he was like, I don't want you running it more than 3 years. And we got super busy then because we were, like I say, we were building a lot of spindles. We have our own quick change rear ends, we dump cans. I mean, we were doing everything. And so after I ran dirt 3 years, I actually took a year off just to build cars, go help people, because I was burned out. I was working,
Damn.
I was doing that and also working full-time at a tool and die job. So I wasn't getting any sleep. And so I finally says, I'm not running this year, and just went and helped customers. And at that point in time, I decided to build an asphalt car and then, go race at Berlin and give that a shot. And I had driven my dad's car around there, but I was like 13. But that's about the only time I've ever been on a racetrack, and it is by far the hardest place that you can. I still say to win there on a consistent basis, my top 5 hardest racetracks to do good at.
Explain to me what's so difficult.
There's no straightaway. It's just round. It's I don't know if I could pick a track that would be similar that I've ever ran down here. I don't know if there's one that I haven't been on one that I thought it was as difficult as that. No, it's easy to get around there. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like hard to go fast around there, and to get to that point where you could win races. I think I ran there 2 years before I won a feature, but once I got that figured out, we won all the time. It was just that. It just those little small things, and it's tough.
Yep, you were racing in pavement ranks in Southwest Michigan, Art Go late models at Berlin, Kalamazoo. Iceman Super Lates at Toledo, championships at Berlin, started racing in the ASA Series in 1990. That's a change. The ASA Series is a touring series.
Yes.
Right? That I'm assuming that your success presented you with an opportunity. How did you get into the ASA ranks?
The ASA part started at Butch Miller, big name in ASA. He was not that far from us.
Yeah.
And so we built their spindles, we built their rear ends, we did all that. Well, when Butch moved down here, I think because I was doing all that parts, and then we ran good at Berlin, we were pretty fast. And so Leroy Troop from Troop Motorsports called me and asked me if I wanted to try ASA. And at first, I think I said yes, and I thought, what am I doing? I love 50-lap races. I don't really want to run 200-lap races. This seems insane.
Yeah.
But I did take the opportunity, but he also brought in Bobby Seneker. So Bobby Seneker was my teammate, or vice versa. We ran together. And so the 2 years we did that, I think we finished 8th in the points my rookie year, and then we finished 4th my second year. And then Leroy was wanting to go down to just a one car again, because it's like racing, it's expensive. And he had a hard time telling me this, and I kind of figured out what's going on. I go, if I was sitting in your shoes, I'd put Bobby Seneker in my car too. Yeah. I mean, he's very good. He raced with my dad for many, many years. And so at that point in time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I think I was just going to go back and run Berlin. That was right at the time that they came out with a new car. And I was like, time this happened, I go, I do not have enough time to try to design a car, because it was drastically different from what we were running. And so I thought, I'll just build a car, run at Berlin. I'm okay with that. And then Harley from Port City called me, and he goes, you have to run this by your dad, because they built race cars, but we built rear ends for them. We kind of did stuff back and forth. And he goes, I'll give you a car, because he says, you got to run. I'll give you a car. He got a car and an engine, and then I got 2 engines, and then I ran it ourselves through our own place, and that was a task that I didn't think I was going to be. That was going to be tough. Right. Great sponsors, Burgess Chevrolet. They had sponsored my dad's for forever, and then that year we went out and pretty much tied it. I think we finished second. I think it was by 1 point. I think it was a tiebreaker with. I think Mike won one more race than I did, and then the following year we'd won the championship.
Yeah. What was winning the ASA championship like for you? I asked that question because my memory of the ASA at that time was, it was like what the Truck Series is today. You know, the Truck Series didn't exist. Truck Series would come in a couple years after you won that championship, actually. But Mark Martin, Bob Seneker, Butch Miller, all these guys, Dick Trickle, had risen the profile of the ASA up to, basically like a Busch North or a very reputable, challenging, difficult series.
Yeah.
And so winning that must have put some eyeballs on you and gave you some opportunity.
It did. I think it was a Group 5 sales, I think it is, that brought that and got to TV in on that. That was the biggest help.
Yeah, TNT.
For sure. And TNT or TNN, whatever.
TNN, yeah.
That was probably the biggest help on that. And then, so, I mean, my goal, it's kind of weird to say this, but my goal wasn't to get down here. I just loved racing. I loved racing. I was okay with doing it around home and things of that nature. And it was actually your dad was the one. I did a autograph session with him at Bridger Chevrolet, and we had the ASA car there. And of course, he brought the crew up there. They used my car to do a pit stop for all the fans and stuff like that. And chatted with your dad, but that was about it, just from the autograph thing. And I don't remember what time of year it was. It was still when I was running ASA, though. He had called, and we had 3 different shops. I didn't have a phone in one shop. My ma comes out there and says, "Guy on the phone for you." I said, "Who is it?" He says, "It's Earnhardt." And I thought, okay, just say, I'm sure you heard these stories 100 times, right?
It blows my mind.
I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Somebody's just screwing around. And about an hour and a half later, he called back again. I thought, well, maybe I better take it. I don't know. And then he was like, "Benson, Earnhardt." And I started laughing. And he goes, "I want you to drive my car at Dover." And I'm like, "What?" And I says, "Okay." And then, he was pretty short because he's, "All right, I'll have my people get a hold of your people." And I go, "I don't have people."
Yeah.
But then somebody did call me back, and they said, I don't remember if it was Goodwrench or AC Delco or what was on the car at that point in time. They said they wouldn't let Dale not run the race. Because back then, I don't, did you ever run it when it was 500 miles?
No.
That was grueling. Yeah. And it was at that time, because I think when I ran it, my first year was 500, and they switched it to 400, which is the best thing I ever did. But so they wouldn't let him not run it. And he says, and then he just says, I'll work something out. Well, that's when he got a hold of Ernie Irvin, and I ran Ernie's car for the first time. So that I think that was prompted through your dad, through Berger when I did the autograph thing, and I think because of the TV.
Yeah.
The TV is if they didn't have TV, ASA wouldn't be known when it is today probably. But I wish it would have carried on. It was a great series.
Yeah. So you get the opportunity to race in Ernie's car at Michigan.
Yep.
And that didn't go as well as you'd hoped. Ended up flipping the car, which is...
And the second lap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I can imagine that that was pretty disheartening to be given, here's my chance.
Yeah.
Got a good car. Then it goes that way, and you're like,
yeah.
What was the emotions?
The whole week was kind of funny, or not funny, but of course I get down there and there's no race car. And I go, okay, this ain't good. I'm looking for Ernie. His car's there. Well, Ernie was at the hospital because Kim they were having her first baby, and I'm standing down there. There's no car. Well, I don't know. The guy I wouldn't say got lost, but got in a spot where he couldn't get underneath the bridge. So he was like an hour and a half late. And so I really only got maybe 10, 15 laps of practice before going into qualifying. And the qualifying wasn't horrible, but I thought, okay, be patient, which I was. I just got bumped coming off turn 2, and I remember your dad and Ernie were going, why would they put me at Michigan for what?
Right. It's a big
old
place.
And they're like, well, you're not going to get upside down. Everything will be fine. And of course that happened coming off too. And it was quite the ride.
Yeah.
And of course, when I get out and I go, really? You said we never get upside down here. So I kind of proved that wrong. But, but that did open the door where Ernie is like, I'm going to help you somehow. And it ended up, I think he went and ran a couple races for Bace Motorsports, and then he got me into that car.
Yeah. So that's interesting to have Ernie be that person for you. You and him stay in contact today, or?
Not too much. I think he mainly lives down in Florida now. I did see him at Darlington. I did chat with him for a little bit there, but yeah, I mean, he always laughs because he took that frame and put it in his pond out in his front yard, so he's using it, for the fish. And I forget who bought their house, and they were laughing about it. The car was still there. They finally got rid of it.
Stenhouse ended up buying it.
Yeah, I think it was. It was. Yeah, and so no, that was a big help. I mean, Chevrolet was a big help. With Berger sponsored my dad. I think they started sponsoring my dad in 1976, and they still sponsor us on anything we want to do with the Super that I've run, and that was always a big help.
Yeah,
they big strong ties with Chevrolet.
You ran full time for Bace in 1994, winning your first Busch Series race at Dover that year. This is when, I remember you running in ASA, and I remember seeing the races on TV and hearing your name. And when you started getting these opportunities to run in the Busch Series, that's kind of where I started picking up on your career. Bace Motorsports was a great race team, won a couple championships with Randy LaJoy. Right before I would get into the series, you feel like you had kind of a role in helping that team develop and evolve. I mean, Jack Spraggs was there for a while, but they were kind of still trying to get their legs, so to speak, to become that team that they would become.
Yeah, I don't know how long they were around when I went there. I remember Jack being in there because, Jack Sprague didn't grow up that far from me, and I built one of his, I wouldn't say his first race car, I built one of his early race cars. So I've known him, and that was kind of odd I was kind of uncomfortable because it was like they were getting rid of Jack and putting me in there. I thought, I'd rather have it going to somebody that you didn't know than it does. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But, and then I thought we ran pretty good. We had ran at Charlotte, and I think we ran pretty good, and then somebody blew up, and we got tied up in a crash there. But then we ran Rockingham, and we were, I think, running second with I don't know how many laps, catching leader, and then I think it was just the roll pin in the distributor come off, and it quit running. And I thought, you kidding me, with only a couple laps to go, and was my second or third race. So that's when Bumgarner hired me. So I wasn't hired yet. I just ran a couple of races.
Really? Yeah.
And of course, when I get down there, we started running good, and then he kind of laughed, pulled me over, sitting there talking. He goes, "How old are you?" And I told him I was 30, and he's like, 30? He goes, "Crap, I'd known that, I never hired you." I says, "Well," I says, "what are you going to do now then?" I don't know. I don't know if he just thought I was younger or he wanted somebody younger, and it wasn't that way. But I'm glad he didn't throw me out of the door then. So, because we obviously had a good run with that, but it did take a little bit of time to get going. Steve Bird was tremendous to work with. I loved working with him.
Yeah,
and
won a lot of races.
And I think that I don't think people understand really the relationship with the crew chief, how important that is. But we just clicked, and he's a racer, I'm a racer. There's just no bull crap. This is what I want. This is what I like, and then we had to figure it out. And Charlotte was where that happened, because I wasn't that good there to start with, and I go, "Dude, I looked at your history stuff. You always hauled ass here." And I think with Robbie Moroso, and I said, "Why? I don't make any sense." He goes, "Well, I don't have that setup in a car." And I says, "Well," I go, "that you guys are really fast. Just put it in and let me figure it out." When he switched that over, man, that thing just hauled butt. And I says, "Look, I'll figure it out." And we ran good ever since then. He was like, I think he was being cautious to not get you a fast race car. But sometimes a slower race car is harder and more dangerous than a fast one. Yeah. So we bridged that gap pretty quick, and then we were pretty good.
Yeah, you had a lot of success. 19 top 10s, won the Busch Series Championship in 1995, won at Atlanta, which is a tough racetrack.
Yes, it is.
Yep, Hickory, another tough one. Two completely different ends of the spectrum. You also competed in the inaugural Truck Series race in 1995. You had a best finish of second at IRP. The success with Bumgarner in the Bace Motorsports, quickly got you snatched up into the Cup Series for Bahari. I used to go over to that shop when Michael was driving there, and I knew a couple of guys on the team and would go over there and hang out with them when I was 15, 16 years old. And, when they were kind of a unique team. They were probably much different when you got there, but I would go over there and they would have some really, really good race cars, and then they would have a couple cars had 1.5 inch Bondo on the quarter panels and stuff that they just been, they were just getting by with. They take to the short tracks. But, they started really, they started that team with Michael many, many years ago, and they were developing themselves into a contender even when Michael was driving the car. So you got an opportunity to get in that car when it was sort of cresting up, and you were able to take it even further, and have some really solid runs with that team.
Yeah,
they weren't an A team. That was they were a B team, and you obviously knew that. What was getting that opportunity like? Were you hesitant even with the success you were having with Bace to go to that team or take that next step?
Yeah, I don't know if I was ready to do that. I didn't really think I was ready to do Busch, tell you the truth. And I think sometimes you have that success so early. I think sometimes it's one of those deals that I think you should just wait a minute and continue that. But then you had so many people down there saying, dude, if you got the opportunity, take it. And I honestly thought it was too early, even though my age, I think my age helped me in that probably. But that was tough. That's tough. That's a tough move. And we did have some good runs. Indy was our, right there at the beginning. I thought, okay, we're running good. We just kind of messed up at the end with a pit stop, and that didn't go well. I stalled the car, and then all of a sudden we're way back. But we had a shot at winning that first year with many laps that we ran. But in other places we did run good. We had a lot of glimpse of really being a pretty good situation. But they were building their own engines there. Of course, you're buying cars, but we were doing our own bodies, stuff like that. I don't think they had the funding to do it. And Doug Hewitt was amazing. Probably one of the great crew chiefs that I worked with, Doug Hewitt. He's awesome. And I really wish I would have stayed there longer.
Really?
And because I think there was that opportunity. But at that time, I think both me and Doug kept going to Chuck. Ryder owned it at that time, saying that we need these tools to win. And his was like, well, if we win a race, we'll get those tools. And so there was that little bit of conflict there. And I think that's, I think they could have been really, really good. I think they were great. They could have been really great.
They were like right there on the cusp of like triggering something pretty remarkable with a team and with a sponsor like Pennzoil. It seemed like it was just right around the corner. How did you get the opportunity to go to Jack? What was that? Do you remember that phone call?
No, it wasn't a phone call.
Oh,
this is muddy waters on this, but I was approached from actually somebody from NASCAR basically telling me I needed to go over there. I never talked to Jack. Yeah. And so I didn't want to, but I felt like I was getting forced to go over there. And then,
I remember that whole deal feeling just a little off.
It was because when I was hired to do it from Jack, because I eventually obviously talked to Jack, I didn't end up at the car I was supposed to. I was supposed to be here in Mooresville. Buddy Parrott was supposed to be the crew chief, and that's how that road was going. And then within a month, everything turned upside down.
And you'd already decided to do it.
Yeah, I was already committed to do it.
Yeah, so you'd already walked away from what you had.
Yep. But I didn't, I only had a 2-year contract with the 30, and I think that was actually the first contract I ever had, because I run for Bace, I didn't have a contract. Just go race. That's what I did. So that was a difficult part there, because I felt like I was shoved to go over that way, and that was not my wish. But I didn't know how to handle it. I'm new down there.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to as many people as I should have.
But at the same time, it looked like it was a step up.
I think it would have been if it would have done what the original agreement was.
Yeah.
I think it really would have been.
Yeah. But when you got there, it seemed like right out of the gate, it was a difficult
It was. We started, well, Daytona, I think it was that first year. We missed a race. Both me and David Green were running. We were both in the race. And for whatever reason, he tried to go by me on the last lap, and he got loose and hit us, and we both spun. Well, that knocked me out of the race. And I was like, dude, we were both in the race. There's nobody around us, you know. So Jack was mad. I was mad. And so was David. I mean, it's just one of those things. But, and we started out pretty good. We were really fast.
I went to Rockingham. Yeah, you had a good run there.
Really good run until the engine broke. And there was some stuff happened there. Then all of a sudden they were trying to take our car for us to bring it over to Mooresville. And then Steve Meal at the time was there, and he was blown up because I think he wanted to go with Mark. And like I said, everything changed at that point in time. And then he was down there with a torch. He said, I'll cut this car up before they take it from us. And I knew at this point in time, I go, this is not going to be good. So I had a 4-year deal. And after 2 years, I walked away.
So I remember it coming out of the gate pretty strong, looking good, looking positive. And then it was like a struggle every single week to get results.
It was horrible.
Yeah. I just have a hard time understanding. Like I know that Jack and Roush as a history are different. It's a different culture and a different place to work. We've talked with Biffle on the show and several other people, and it was a functioning place that could be successful and you could actually go there and produce, but they did things a certain way, and Jack operated with a certain outset and mindset or approach. And if that you didn't fit, you didn't fit. And then, you know, and so what were the things, I guess, you know, what was irreparable? Why, you know, no one that I know of, even when things got, you know, when things got difficult, have, you know, maybe McMurray, I don't know, but not many people have wanted to escape the situation. So what was irreparable for you? It was like a 5-car team at that point.
It was, but
was it just spread too thin?
Oh, very thin. I think they wanted their top 2 cars to win, and that's all they cared. Now, if I owned a 5-car team or a 4-car team, I want them all to win. I want to run them first, second, third, fourth, and fifth if there's 5. That would be the goal. Yeah. I don't think that was their goal. I think their goal was to make sure that these 2 ran really good. It's the only thing I can think of. Yeah. We were a skeleton group. We had more people on the Busch team than we had at Roush. When I was at Bace Motorsports, had more people. Yeah. And if you're going to run a Cup Series, that's difficult. You know this.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, I think it could be efficient, but it just wasn't. Not with no people. And you know, we did crash a couple cars, and that came to turning point because Jack. I mean, I do like Jack, but working for there was tough. And it got to the point, I forget where we were at in the points, and he said, I'm going to start charging you if you wreck another car. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, Jack, I've wrecked more race cars running for this team, and I have my entire career. I don't think it's all me. I said, I'll take some blame, but it ain't all me. And I said, so I got a little offended him saying I had to pay for the wrecked cars. I told him that if you don't, I says, don't pay me the rest of the year. And if you don't get me in the top 12 in points, I said, find another driver.
Yeah.
And that's where it ended. I mean, I made it through the year, but it was over at that point in time.
Man.
And that was at Charlotte because we were testing there. Mark was there. And there's no worse feeling to have Mark Martin jump in your car and go run, right? He's going to run 2-3 tenths faster, no matter who it is. You know, it could be in Gordon's car or whoever. Mm-hmm. Well, he did. He went out there and he ran about 2 tenths faster at Charlotte. And he'd come in there and says, man, this is one of the best cars I've ever driven. And I says, great. I says, I will trade you. You could have that car. I want your car. Because he was 3/4 of a second slower than he was in his car.
Yeah.
And he just got done saying that's the best car I've ever driven.
Yeah.
And I says, well, we're trading right now. I says, you know, and then he got a little confused with that until he looked at the times, and he just walked away, didn't say a word. He's like, oh, that's not good. Because it drove good, just went fast.
Yeah.
And that was the start of they fired the crew chief, and I don't think that was the right thing to do. And it just was I see where it's going. So I just, at the end of the year, just find somebody else.
When you were looking for your way to exit, what opportunities did you have on the table?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. There was an opportunity with Yates, and I talked to Doug Yates there for a little bit, and they had said that, hey, if you got out of that, we'd hire you. Well, I didn't get out of that for that reason. I think I was already doing it when they talked about it. When I did get it done, they had already hired Ricky Rudd. So at that point in time, I was like, well, we'll just see what happens. And that's pretty much how I got involved with getting in
Tyler Jett.
With
yeah.
I'd say the 10 car. I don't know if it started off with the 10 car, but
yeah, that would become the 10 car. A lot of people remember you mostly outside of your truck series success driving this 10 car, particularly in a race at Daytona in the 500. The first year you guys go up there, you've got no sponsorship. There was a lot of great conversation around your team, the speed y'all had, and y'all were able to, I think, get Lycos on the car.
We did. We had that. I don't know how real it was.
Yeah,
but
right.
We did have it on.
But it was just still a white car with a little logo on the side. And I remember y'all made a gamble at the end of the race on tires to try to go out there and win the race, and almost pulled it off. That was what was unique about this team? Because this was the team, you'd came into the 30 car with Pennzoil. The results were good. The team was improving. It didn't tank. It didn't, the performance didn't drop off when Michael got out and you got in it, or whoever was in the car before. Always associate that car with Michael Waltrip. But you go to Roush and it flamed out really bad.
It did.
Right? And no one would know really why, and just assume, man, if it didn't work at Roush, where's it going to work? But this was a team where you really found success. What was it about this group?
I knew one or two people over there, and when I went over there, the one thing I guess I did like about it, they were all short track guys working on this car, and just people that I've seen around the garage area, and some of the people I've known outside of that run, like James Ince was there. He was big into dirt cars and the outlaw dirt cars, and with Larry Phillips and Terry Phillips, stuff like that, and there was 3 or 4 other guys that I recognized from. Some of them from ASA, some of them from here. I thought, man, this would be kind of cool. They're all short track guys, and maybe that's not a good or bad thing in this particular sport, but I do like their ambition to make sure everything's right and get done and fast working at it, and that was the atmosphere that it had, and so that's when I says I would love to run it, and just as long as it goes, it goes. It doesn't matter. In Daytona, we were good at Daytona. We struggled a little bit after we pulled the qualifying engine out. Then all of a sudden we lost some speed, and then we had some conversation with Randy Dort and Rick and all that, and they gave us a different engine, and we picked back up to where we felt that we were already going to be. And then we run the 125s with it. And then I think Hendrick, they actually flew that engine back and redid it and brought it back for the 500. Wow. So a lot of that success was just over that conversation of just that one engine switch. We were like, how do we lose so much speed? And with them doing that, I think is one of the main reasons why we were good. We did do 2 tires at the end. And actually, the car was still pretty good. It drove really good. But I got too far out on a restart, and then I'm looking. I was in a Pontiac, had 4 Fords behind me. I knew I was a sitting duck, and it was a matter. I tried to come down, but once he got me loose, and I remember your dad coming over and says, "Man, I would have put him in that pond, cut him off." I go, "Yeah, but I would have been with him because all I'm doing is trying not to wreck the car at this point in time." And I just slid up enough. He got underneath me, and I thought, "Well, that's over." But it was still a great run.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
fantastic.
Obviously, everybody wants that to turn out different, but I think we still finished 12th, and that for me down there, that was great. It was awesome.
So you run second at Bristol, and your best cup finish at that point. The team was sold to MB2. MB2 is a unique team with a lot of unique history that had some success over the years. What was that transition like? Was it more stabilizing, or was there some uncertainty?
No, for sure. No, it was definitely more stable because it felt like we were going from. We tried to mess the system up a little bit. We went to where was it? I think it was California to test. Well, we didn't have any cup tests left, so we went there as a West and West. Well, we got caught, and Mike Kelton's like called and he goes, "Yeah, you are running that race, right?" And I think at that time James goes, "Oh, we just got caught." He goes, "Oh yeah, we're running that race." So we brought that car out there. We had to run the West and West race, and we won that race. And then where did we get the engine? I think we got the engine from Hendrick through Sprague. I think it was one of Sprague's engines. And then they deemed it illegal. And then it was like all of a sudden taken a win or $40,000 fine. Well, Tim Beverly didn't have the money. Well, you have to pay that before you can run the next race. So we were loading everything up for the cup race. Everybody's like, "What's going on?" He says, "Can't pay the fine. We're going home." And then, of course, then they come back and says, "Oh, hold on." And he goes, "No, that's your rule. That's what we're doing." And I don't know what they worked out. They either cut it way down. I still don't think he paid it at that point in time. But that's when we realized that financially we were a lot more trouble than what we thought we were. And that's when MB2 kind of stepped in at that point in time.
Yeah.
So it didn't really change. Our team didn't change. We just changed car owners.
Yeah. You got Valvoline as a sponsor, and you'd have a really strong run at Dover, second at Dover, finished 13th in points, came back in 2001, won the Winston Open, continued with them as well in 2002. I want to talk about, you had a crash at Richmond in the Busch Series and broke some ribs, missed a couple races, and then got in a car and broke them again.
Yeah, the Richmond one, I mean, I broke some ribs in my back there, but they were a little bit more problem. I had a shatter on my aorta or my heart. That's what kind of kept me out of the thing. And they kind of watched that for a little bit, at least for the 2 days or whatever. And so that was either a go or no go, either to have a surgery or not. And
what were they thinking they was going on?
They think I ripped it from the rack because it was a pretty hard hit. But then it ended up, they kept checking, I don't know how many CT scans and MRIs that I went through in that 24-hour period. It was a lot. And then they finally said, "Okay, I think we're okay, but you probably ought to not run for a little bit." So I did. I stayed out in, I can't remember which one I went back to first. I don't remember if it was, I think it was at DAYTONA is where I heard him again.
Yeah.
Where me and Michael got hooked together. But that was on a different side, though. It was just, I don't know why my ribs, I don't know what the deal is. I had LaJoy seats. Everything was good there. It's just some of the impacts are just
hard.
I mean, we all know that.
Yeah.
And they were just, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And, I got with LaJoy and Jonathan Paul that's down here. And, he was just taking x-rays where all the broke happened to be the same angle as the seat. So that's when Randy and I started doing different things on there that helped a bunch. And so working with Randy on the seats and all that was pretty cool. But I think that's just my background of wanting to make things better and things of that nature. And there was obviously a reason why we were breaking stuff. So.
Yeah. At the end of that year, you would go to Rockingham and get your first cup win, which was remarkable. I think the opinion of the fan base and even the garage was really, y'all were still that little team that could, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And doing a lot with a little. James was the crew chief at the time. And I want to, that win seemed like that was going to be the catalyst, right, to send y'all forward. James would end up stepping away from the operation.
Yeah, he did.
Like
all of a sudden.
All of a sudden.
And that kind of turned us upside down. But
exactly.
That was one of those deals, though, that we were trying to build cars in-house. We were still running Hopkins or Laughlin's or whatever it was. And the other side, I don't know who came in. I know Schrader was there for a good bit. I don't know if it was Skinner or somebody else come in there, or Nemechek, and they were trying to build their own cars. Well, this one of those things felt like I always got stuck in these, but they weren't as financial strong there as it kind of appeared to be.
Yeah.
Although great. I mean, it was still good, but all of a sudden they were pushing to build their own cars. I did do some testing on it, and I says, "Oh, the car I think's got potential," but it was kind of evil. It was unpredictable, and so I wouldn't run it. And so we stayed with our stuff. Well, I think it put too much stress on James at that time, and he just walked out.
I know, like y'all had kind of just won Rockingham not long after that. He just steps away. You never got any answer on?
No, I don't. I still don't know what it was. I mean, I know there was a lot of pressure in the sport. We know that, but I think it was that, and I think it was being forced to do something with these cars or whatever the situation was. And then Jay Guy stepped into that there in Gary Putnam, and we actually finished the year off just fine. I mean, it didn't really change. I think the last race that I ran would have been at Miami, and I think we finished 4th in that race, and then it was kind of over at that point in time. I mean, they were just like, I know Riggs drove it there for a short bit, but I don't think it went very long after that.
No,
because it was starting to head that way.
It was like when James left. I mean, I just felt like that he and you were a good combination and a good reason why that car continued to sort of produce and improve. And eventually, it wins this race that we're all expecting that was going to, y'all were kind of running 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, finally get this win. And then he decides that he needs to get out of here. And it was never the same since. At the end of 2003, they would release you and bring in Riggs. Riggs comes in and, tried his best to make it work. Rodney Childers was a crew chief at one point for that team, who's here in Junior Motorsports. Rodney would go on to have great experience. But you would go back to the Busch Series. Was there you'd go race for James in the at Phoenix Racing, which is always a good time.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is such an interesting landing spot for you, right? Yeah. You seem like a very reserved, methodical, smart decision. I'm not going to do this unless it works or feels good. And James's operation was a little flamboyant, a little brash, very honest about who they were.
Yep.
And that was an odd pairing. But did you seek out more opportunities at the Cup level when they released you from the 10? Or
not really?
Did this pop up and you went, man, that sounds good?
Well, I love James. I mean, he's awesome. But I knew going in that this was a 5 or 6 race deal, even though we're still covered for the year.
Yep.
I mean, everybody standing there watches. We see what happens.
Yeah.
If you ain't going to win every week, he's going to try something different. And I knew that going in.
Really?
So I was like, I'm fine with this.
Okay.
But we were still doing our TV show. So I always had something to lay back on. So it was like, I go, well, this will be fun. And we did. We went there and we did have some good runs, but where was it? Gateway. We're shifting there back then. Well, the shifting handle kept falling off, and he was upset over that and a couple other things. And I think even Texas, we qualified horrible, and even though the car was fast, and I actually complained there's something on the track. Well, they went out and checked. I finished my qualifying thing, and we didn't put the caps on the water heater or cool down unit. So I was spraying water out. So I started at the back. It was yellow freight race with yellow freight on the car. And we drove up, and I think we finished 3rd or 4th. And James is just mad that I'm like, oh, your people were happy. But at that point in time, I go, oh, I know he's going to make a change eventually.
Really?
Which he did. I knew that going in, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been things. So then, I was still doing some TV. Then I obviously got an opportunity to go do the trucks.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear from you is anything that happened to you that would maybe most people might view as disappointing really didn't get under your skin?
No.
Is that something that is that some trait from your father? Is that you you kind of go into these situations going, I know what I'm facing. I know what could and can happen. And if it did go well, it went well. If it didn't go well, you moved on to the next thing. Without any, I mean, is there real frustration that you hide? Is there some disappointments that eat at you, or all that stuff is just kind of water under the bridge?
Oh, it's going to.
Yeah.
There is those spots where it does do that, but there's so many things out of your control that you can leave there and be mad. Of course, you are when that happens. Don't get me wrong, you are. But it's like, I can't fix that.
Yeah.
So how much of it do I want to ruin my life before I decide to go up the other way?
Yeah.
I learned out on that pretty early, I think, just working with my dad and how he approached things and how hard he worked. I mean, working for my dad was tough. I mean, he's a workaholic. We did the race shop. He worked at the railroad. I worked there, and then I had a full-time job and was doing the same thing. And I used to always laugh. I says, I love Sundays because that was my day off because I only had to work from noon to 6. And I'd love Sundays, and work for my dad. And I think that I didn't really get that frustrated because I didn't see him get that frustrated. And I think that's just probably just my way of dealing with it. It was like, well, if this happens and it already happened, I can't fix it. So why wait too long for you to say, you know what, just move on, find something else to do? Because I always felt like if it didn't work out and I could always go back home.
Yeah.
I could always go back home and build cars
and you would.
I would.
Yeah.
And I did, unfortunately, or fortunately, I did it down here when I was racing Cup. I'd had so many customers wanted me to build cars, and I said, look, I'm not going up to Michigan to do it. So I built a building down here by next door to Champion Tire, and I think through all my Cup stuff I was doing, I was still building race cars for other people.
Damn.
And I quit doing it probably about 8-9 years ago. I finally stopped. And I was like, all right,
no one would even know.
No, they did.
Yeah.
Everybody thought I moved back to Michigan.
Yeah. You ended up landing in the 23 truck for Bill Davis Racing at the back end of the 2004 season or sometime around then, and would have a lot of fun, I imagine. I mean, watching you run that truck and know that every weekend you got an opportunity to run in the top 3, you're going to win races. We were talking about this series yesterday. The truck series was solely developed to market the truck vehicle, right? But it was also a place where a lot of guys found a home where they could race for a living. That didn't exist for a long time. You might, yeah. I mean, ASA or maybe in the Busch Series, but the Todd Bodines of the world, the Mike Skinners, a lot of guys ended up in the truck series and made a nice living to be able to kind of finish out, that sort of 20-year, career that we all hope to have. And you were able to do that in that truck and have a lot of fun. I mean, was that as good or as much fun as you had behind the wheel of a stock car as it looked?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what series it is. If you're running good and you can, propel the team or to get these, wins and all that, it's always fun. Doesn't matter what level you're at. And, but we had good success there. Good crew chiefs. I ran there 3.5 years, I think it is. I came in there halfway through, and we bumped right and going well. And I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. And I was on a handshake deal. We went from race to race. I says, and I finally told Bill, I says, I hate calling on Wednesday and saying we're racing, not racing. So I finally just told him, I go, only call me when you don't want me to run. And then that way I could keep in contact with the crew chief and try to figure out your travel plans. Because every week I'm like, I don't know if I'm racing or not racing.
Really?
So he says, all right. So we did that, and we did that for 3 years.
Yeah. Arby's is putting the pedal to the metal with value that breaks away from the pack. Introducing the new Meat in 3 box for $7.99 that's filled with Arby's quality favorites. The Meat in 3 box now has new sandwiches for you to choose from. You get your choice between a crispy chicken sandwich, or a crispy fish sandwich, or a ham and Swiss melt. And every Meat and 3 box comes with melty mozzarella sticks and some crispy curly fries, and a peach cobbler roll for dessert. This thing's just giving sweet as a peach a whole new meaning. Plus, you get a small drink. It's Meat and 3, but you're getting 5 items. There's so much food in there, all for only $7.99. Arby's is giving you more meal for your money and is filling you up with your favorite food that you just can't get anywhere else. Arby's is known for always giving you more than you expect. Available for a limited time at participating locations while supplies last. Prices may vary. Get your Meat and 3 box at any Arby's near you today. You were the most popular driver in the series, well appreciated by the fans.
Yeah.
I imagine that was a good feeling.
Probably as good as any championship.
Yeah.
I met how many times you've won it. It's awesome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is awesome.
You would win a lot of races and win the most popular driver award multiple times. In my opinion, I mean, you ran a few more races after that, but that was kind of the bookend of your career, as in the stock cars. You'd be a champion in the truck series, and just as quickly as you won these championships and had all this success, it was over. The career at that level was over. Now we're going to talk about it. You go on to do a lot more in racing beyond that point. This is a part of the show where I like to ask this question because it's as much for me as it is for the person sitting in that chair. But what was the process like, I suppose, in closing the door on racing at the truck O'Reilly or Cup level, right? You mentally, those doors are open. You're in a truck, you're winning races, and so mentally you're open to whatever opportunity might walk in the door. But at some point, you say, you know what, I'm ready. Like your dad, got up one day and said, I don't want to drive anymore. One day you said, you know what, I'm going to go home. I'm going to redirect my focus in racing to something else. What was that like? You're down here, you've established a foundation, you've got a shop, you're building cars, you're doing all these things.
I mean, it's tough. I knew at that point in time that before the year was over, when we won the truck championship, I knew that team was closing. Mm-hmm. So wasn't a whole lot of opportunities. And I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do. I know Harvick called me once and asked about going over the truck. And I was interested in that. I really was. But then it was when we won the championship and then Bill Davis is closed, I called him. Well, he wanted me to leave with 4 or 5 races to go. And I said, dude, I can't do that. Not in the middle of running for a championship, and I'm running against his truck. Yeah. And so that I was actually kind of excited about that. But then when the year was done, he was like, well, no, you didn't want to do it. And I said, well, I did, but I just assumed you're going to wait till the end of the year, not during the middle of the year. Or not. I mean, there was only 4 races to go. And so at that point in time, I was like, I don't know, what is it, Red Horse Racing? They hired all of us from there to go try to win a championship. And, we build all the bodies, or Triad did there, but he came down there. And I thought that was going to be a really good situation. And then I think we were 6 in points. The teammate was 21st, somewhere in that area. And I think he started to see how expensive this is to run for a championship. Because it is. Running to win races or running for a championship, they are two different budgets.
Yes, sir.
And I think he saw that, thought that this is not going to work. So he was basically saying, you need to build trucks like the other team. And I go, well, hold it. We're 6 in points or back. I said, that's going backwards. And I've always been very vocal about moving backwards. I'm going to say something. I'm not just going to sit there and, okay, this will be fine. Well, then he fired all of us. So I thought, okay. I go, you know what? That was actually better than the road we were going to go down. And at that point in time, I said, you know what? If a great opportunity come along, I'll do it. If not, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really dwell on it. I mean, I felt like I for sure could go in there and be competitive. I knew that.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anything to prove to anybody, so I didn't care. I was like, well, I'll just do something else. And that was still just, building race cars and still racing. I mean, I still raced, it just not at that level.
Yeah, you went back to super modifieds. You raced a super for Brad Litchie.
Yeah, Lichty. Yep.
Lichty. You went back to and raced in the IMSA modifieds at Berlin in 2006. You made your first start in 06 there. You went to Sandusky, nearly won the race. That is something that I think is really fun and fascinating. A lot of guys, when they decide that they're done at the cup level, they don't look to going back to where they came from, right? I told myself, I want to kind of go out the same way I came in. I want to go run a couple of Busch races or O'Reilly or Xfinity races, and did that. And now I'm running my little late model car, the same stuff that I was racing when I was just getting my start. And it's been amazing to go back to these racetracks that I ran at and see a lot of the same people. Now they're fathers or grandfathers and their sons are racing and so forth, but the same families. And the vibe or culture and atmosphere within the garage or in the pits at these racetracks hasn't changed all that much. But I'm curious that a lot of guys like ourselves don't go that route. A lot of guys, when they finish driving, like Jeff Gordon, for example, he's a great example. Like Jeff, when he retired from the Cup, he has zero interest. Now he plays a little bit. He drives a little IROC thing with Ray over at 10 Tenths, and he ran a little Porsche race at Indy one day. But I'm like, man, you still could do it if you wanted to, right? You could you could jump in their O'Reilly car or one of ours and go race at a track that he loves and just have fun one day. He's zero interest. But then there's other guys that still want to race, and they go find things to do, go find race tracks to race at. And that's what you did. You weren't done driving. You weren't ready to be done driving. What was the appeal, I suppose, of going back to the short tracks?
Well, I think the short tracks are my passion. I love them probably more. I mean, going to the super speedways, when you run your Charlottes, Daytonas, Talladegas, they're kind of cool at the beginning until you wreck there once or twice. And then I dreaded. I didn't dread going there. I didn't care as far as that, but it was like, you just know eventually you're going to get tied up into something. And that was a little less appealing to do. Like if I was going to go play and they give me an opportunity to run in a short track, I got to pick a short track more than I would Charlotte or Atlanta. And I did help some testing with some people. And, after I'd say it was done, it was after my truck stuff. And I was running a super in my late model. And one of the guys that was on the 23, they were testing over at Martinsville. And he's come over and help me. So I did. I went over there and he wanted me to get in. I go, dude, I ain't been in one of these in 6, 7, 8 years. And that's, of course, they got the big sway bar, all the different crazy stuff.
And wildly fast, lots of power.
And so I went out there and I ran, and I go, all right, because the kid, he said you couldn't keep it on the bottom. And then I run right on the bottom. I says, man, this turns better than the truck we won this race with, And we did that for a little bit. And then I was like, all right. Well, then he wanted me to go to Atlanta. And I told him, I said, I'll come down and help, but I don't have any desire of getting a truck. Well, he eventually got me in there, and it was like, Atlanta, like going into turn 3 there, it's never secure ever, no. Anytime. And it's bad when you're doing it at a weekly basis. Well, when you haven't been in one for 5, 6 years, that's not a very good feeling. Mm-hmm. And so I went in there and I was like, all right, I don't need to be doing this. And I came in and I go, unless we run through 2, 3 sets of tires, I'm not going to be able to help you. And I said, the kid's running faster. I was way faster than him at Martinsville, but down there, I wouldn't run that speed. I was like, it's going to take more laps than I feel I should be doing this.
Yeah.
And I don't feel at this point in time I'm helping you.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I stayed for the rest of the day, don't get me wrong. But, and we did change a couple things, just based off his comment. In the 3 laps that I did run, I was like, I'd change this and this. And they did. They picked up a fair amount, and then he was more comfortable. So I guess that was okay.
Yeah.
But, so like I say, I like the short tracks. I love to do that. I love to run my late model car. Suit Modified is something that was new to me. I've seen them, I've watched them, never been in one. And they're crazy. They're insane how fast they are. And we've run at 5/8 mile tracks faster than we run at Charlotte Motor Speedway in a cup car. That's insane. And they're a lot more physical. Like 50 lap race on those is all you want to do. And they're insane, but a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Guys are very respectful in those cars.
I imagine you have to be.
There is no wheel banging.
Yeah.
Very little.
You were involved in a bad crash at Berlin in 2009, broke your collarbone, separated a shoulder, ribs, bruised your lung, broke your wrist, burns.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah. Is that when you go through something like that, do you have some serious conversations with yourself about whether you need to be doing this at your age? None.
No.
Did anybody?
My dad did.
Yeah, right.
My dad
Did anybody
had
in your family try to
conversation.
not talk some sense into you?
And so we had that, and I was tied up for a while. And so at the end of the year, Kyle Busch called me and says, "Hey, we helped this kid down at Smyrna." And I said, "Okay." It was the truck team. And I says, "The only rule is at the end of the test, I want to drive a truck because I haven't been in a vehicle." And, like I say, I had a severe concussion, which I like to talk a little bit about with you later. But, and I was like, watch and crew chief when I was at Bill Davis, Rick Wren, he was a crew chief then. So I was very understand what he was doing. Reading all the tire sheets and stuff, I saw where they were at. And so it was set up that I got in the truck at the end. So I was to get ready, and he goes, "Well, I'm going to do this to it." And I go, "No." I says, "Free this thing up." I'm looking at all the stuff, the kid's running. And I says, "Free it up. Let's just roll it like we would if you and I were still racing at Bill Davis." And which he did. So I just left pit road and just straight through the gears on the floor. And I ran 3 laps, came in. I says, "I'm good." And he was like, "I didn't expect you to leave pit road the way you did and go." And I says, "Well, I think if you approach it different, you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
If you don't just go." And I did. And he was like, "Truck's pretty good." I go, "Yeah, we run like 3-4 tenths faster than the kid we were helping," but he didn't have as much experience. But, and I never been at Smyrna, I never been on truck.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Nope, I'm good." And so, good thanks to Kyle for trading that off, me to help his guys. And then him let me jump in there. I knew I was fine after that.
Well, you got to race a couple of truck races for Kyle Busch. Your final NASCAR start was with Kyle at Texas.
Yes. Yeah.
10th. You were trying to put a deal together with Turn 1 Racing in 11. Didn't come together. And you were back in the IMSA modifieds. You served on the National Motorsports Appeals panel a few times.
I did. I think I was on for a couple of years. And
like that's a bit of an honorable opportunity.
It is, but
considered.
man, I tell you what, when when it's all your people that you've raced with, and some of them are your peers and some of them aren't, I just felt like I was in a weird situation.
I'm sure it was awkward.
And there was one particular case that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, it was an odd feeling. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, everybody has their idea of pushing the rules
and interpretation
of the rules. We all do it. There's anybody that races that hasn't done it.
Yeah.
And some of them are probably more over the edge than the other, and this was just one of those weird rules. Actually, it was a shock failure, but they wouldn't take it apart to find out what it is. And they're just like wanting to hold that penalty up. And I'm like, hold it. I thought we had that. That was our role. And it was just kind of different. And I kind of felt bad because it was like they wanted the fine nobody cares about, but they were really wanting him to like miss the first 5 or 6 races. And this was after a Phoenix thing going. I said, dude, you're going to absolutely destroy his career. If he doesn't have a job going into the season, he's not going to have one the entire season. If that happens in the middle of the year, I don't think it's big of a deal. But so we kind of got that term, but it was, I think it was difficult. And I felt bad. I go, man, I don't really want to be in a situation where, even though they may have caused a situation, boy, you hate to put somebody out of racing just because of somebody's decision.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be that person to make a decision, even though it was a Group 1. But I felt there'd be one day that would be hard to live with, I think.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do it.
You got out of that. This is around 2011, 12. You're back home. You're back racing full time. You race full time in 11 and 12 in the IMSA Super Modifieds. Inducted into the Hall of Fame at 2013, still driving race cars. You joined your father, who went in 01. You were elected into the Michigan Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2018, still driving race cars. You joined your father there, who was inducted in 86. You were inducted into the Berlin Racing Hall of Fame in 22. Your father went in 06. In 2023, you competed in SRX, finished 12th at Berlin. Your final race of your entire career was a 2025 North-South Shootout at Caraway.
Yep.
Local track here in North Carolina, super modified event. You ran 4th. And then you decided to announce your retirement on March the 6th, 2026. So I remember seeing on social media that Johnny Benson has decided to retire. And I thought, was he racing?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know you'd been racing all these years up there in, up north.
Yeah, just around, the north and northeast. The Super Modifieds, they don't, they run more up on the east side. And
have you predominantly been driving super mods?
I think I only ran one full season. I said I'd love to win a championship in that, and
from 2011 to 2025 on average, what were you racing? How many races a year? Sometimes
8, 10.
8 or 10. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of double headers. Like Berlin would run that. We'd run a Friday night, and then a Saturday. They're two totally different shows. It'd be like you showed up instead of the next week. It was just the next day, and that helped on travel and expenses and. So there was a lot of events like that. Other than Caraway, we did practice, qualifying, or heat races on Friday, and then we raced on Saturday. But, every time I wanted to go race, it was 10, 12-hour drive because I still live here. So all the races are up there.
You never moved back home?
I never did.
When you went to race at Caraway and ran 4th, did you get out of the car going, all right, last box is checked? Did you know?
No, I didn't.
What made you decide that I'm done? I'm not going to do another one? What's stopping you from answering the phone one day and going, yeah, I'll drive it? How do you make it official?
Is it ever official?
You made it official.
I know it. I know it. I always feel like I always wanted to run some more, but
just
I love racing with Brad and Mike and all that. Well, Mike, they own a trucking company up there, and Mike's got a sprint car now. And he should do that. He should run the dirt. He's run Super Modifieds his whole life. Yep. And I've had him race my Outlaw Late model. And it was actually funny. It was probably no different than I was. He was scared to death of the thing. And I go, really? You're running a Super? It should be the other way around. And he ran good. He ran second in it, and he did like it. But so I felt, and I told him this. I says, look, I probably need to quit doing this. I'm getting too old to go that fast anyways. But Mike needs to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Because he's working on a sprint car. He's working on his Super. He's working on my Super. And then working during the day too. And it's 11 hours and going across the border for me to go up and help. Mm-hmm. And I felt that I like to work on him all the time. And I wasn't getting that.
Yeah.
So just driving it doesn't necessarily fill that void. I like working on him and then driving him. Try to improve them, trying to win every week and things of that nature. And I think that a little bit of that element was missing, so that's why I chose that.
So you've been down here all this time building race cars and going up there and racing a little bit. You also have mentored some drivers over the course of that time. One of them being Carson Hocevar. How enjoyable, I suppose, was it to help him and What type of reward is that for you personally?
Oh, it's great. All the people I've helped, and I'd help Danica out with yours there for a short bit, but somebody that's new and starting there, like Carson's dad, Scott, he had purchased race cars from me, but he had other drivers driving them, and one day he had said. He goes, hey, when my kid gets a little older, would you help him out? And I says, well, who's your kid? And he points over there, and I go, he's this tall. He's like 10.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, it's going to be a couple years. I knew he was doing the quarter midget stuff. And I really thought that would just be forgotten type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think when he was 11, his dad called and they said he wanted to buy my house car. And I go, I'm not selling you my house car. Why do you want my house car? It don't make any sense. I'll build you a new car. And he goes, no, I want to put the kid in it. Like, what kid? You know, because I'm thinking of their driver. I know there are other drivers, you know, and then he was talking his. And I says, well, let's take us a different approach. Let's bring him down here. Let's put do a seat or foam a seat up and move the pedals. And we went to Hickory to test. And I have tested there a couple, 2-3 times. And he went out, and I know the first time I took the out car there, you get around there pretty fast. I mean, I was kind of surprised. I can look at a track and tell you, and I thought, well, I can get in the low 14s easy enough. I think I can get in the 13s. Well, Kevin, he goes, there ain't no way. I go, you ain't seen these cars run. And this is a late model, not I went 40 lap tires, and I run 1430s, and then I think I get down to 14.0s. And Carson got in it, and he's running 1450s, 1460s, like to start with. Mm-hmm. And by the end of a 2-day test, he's running 1430s. And I expect to be a couple tenths faster than him, but he was gaining that pretty fast. And so then it was like, okay, well then Scott's dad was like, well, we want him to race at Berlin. And I go, you sure you want to do Berlin? I said, Berlin's fast. It's tricky. And he goes, nope, that's what we want to do. So I had him test at Hickory a couple more times, and I told him when he got up there, and I says, listen, I go, this place is way faster than you think it is. And he did. He went out there, and he ran a couple laps, and then I started helping him more, and he got faster and faster, and he did get out of the car. He seemed shaking a little bit. And he goes, this place is fast. Yeah. I go, it's way faster at Hickory. But he would we ran the year, and I meant pretty much running in the top 5 almost the whole year. The second year, I think we struggled a little bit, same car, and then they were kind of wanting to go with the template cars. I didn't build the template cars. I don't care for them that much. And so I hooked him up with Bursley and them, and he did run for them. But he ran through that one spot where he was struggling. But I think it was his growth. I mean, because he wasn't that tall then, and all of a sudden he was like, wham, yeah. Goes way up there. And he did struggle through that, and it took a minute to figure that out. You know, I don't think he thought he was, but I thought physically he wasn't quite ready. Or that growth thing was just making him not ready, I think. And then they worked it out, you know, talked to his dad. Dad put him in a program, had him checked. And then obviously he's doing pretty good. You know,
you've decided to hang it up. So you still live down here. You know, what do you find time to, that you enjoy? What's some of the things that you spend your time doing now that, racing's probably still woven into the DNA of your afternoon or your week, but less and less, especially if you're never, if you're done driving. So,
it is.
Carson's moved on to the Cup Series. Like what's the projects,
I've had calls about mentoring people, but I don't, if it's not like I haven't driven that type of car, like I think if I was going to help somebody like with your cars, not understanding the car that whole little bit, I think it's very hard to help. Now I can do the standard, this, that, but I'm more about trying to get you to go faster. I'm more about chassis and stuff like that. And I don't think that opportunity is going to be available down here just because the cars are very different. So I don't know, but I do still do some fabrication work. There's a couple of buddies, of course, they own businesses with plumbing stuff, and I build their fun stuff that they do, their racks and things of that nature, or just weird stuff. Got my dad's old Corvette. I think he bought that. It's a 1965 Corvette he bought, and I think it was like 10, 12 years old. So I'm in the process of redoing that. Yeah. So I'm keeping busy, but I'm not stuck. I can go do what I want. If I want to take off, if I want to go somewhere, we just take off.
Yeah. Who's we?
Me and Nicole. Yeah. Wife. So yeah, we just. Other than that, I'm more of a homebody. Yeah. I don't mind. We've got like 19 acres. I'm 900 feet off the road. Nobody sees us. It's awesome. Sounds awesome. Got one neighbor back there. lets his horses run free, so they come over and visit, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I love fabrication work, but I don't want it to be 10 hours a day.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like I've done enough work throughout my life that I'll just take these small projects that may take a day or two.
Yeah.
And just find something to do after that.
Yeah. You ever see yourself, like, you ever see yourself working on the short track scene in this environment down here?
I think it'd be interesting. I think maybe would have to see what that would look like.
Right.
Type thing. I mean, I was involved in Berlin when Berlin had that. There was like 4 or 5 of us limited partnerships that were involved in it, and I was on competition rules thing, but we don't have that many rules.
Yeah.
So, and I did that for a little bit, but I don't want to feel like I need to go to the racetrack every week.
Yeah.
And I think like one of the guys that says wanted to mentor a guy, and then he sent me a schedule, and I go, God, that schedule's 5 times more than I was doing racing with the Super. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that.
Sure.
But if I could help somebody, I would. Yeah. I just don't know at what level and how far. I feel like once you get to a certain part, they should be able to handle that. Carson has done that. You get to that part, and it's okay. You got to adjust what's going on. Now just keep going after it.
Yeah, for sure.
And because I did help him at a truck race down at Phoenix.
Really? Yeah.
And well, it's been a few years ago, and so I did do that. I did do that stuff, and I enjoy that.
You talked about the big concussion you had in 2009, I suppose, was it? Is that the only time? I'm sure you've been banged around and rung your bell multiple times. We all go through those. Yep.
It was by far the worst. I shouldn't have lived through that, for one.
Really?
I can't remember the guy's name. That I think he was with GM, and he was one of the safety guys, and he had passed away not long. I can't. Probably about 8-9 years ago, whatever. Maybe not been that long ago. Anyways, I did have a computer in the car, and I just like the aim system for the gauges, stuff like that. And NASCAR came and looked at the car after this wreck, and they took the computer, and he had said that he's never seen a spike straight up. Well, the computer only went to 100 Gs, but it was straight up. He goes, it's always on an angle. He says, this thing was straight up. He goes, I can't guess. I can't even guess what that would have been after they came and looked at the car and everything. Yeah. I mean, it was tore up. It was pretty bad, but I had broke a lot of stuff. I mean, I was in ICU for 4 days. I mean, I don't think it was one of those touch and go things, but I mean, it was my lung, my kidneys, and all that were in pretty bad shape. Yeah. Same with I guess, knocking my head. I was bleeding out of my ear and all that fun stuff. But I have my moments. Yeah. Where I can't remember what happened yesterday. Yeah. And then, I got to figure out. I don't know if there's a way around that.
No. I mean, I'll say this. I'm not a doctor. And so I'm not, for everybody listening, like, I don't fancy myself as an expert of any kind. But, I started, going through the process of the symptoms and went to see my doctor in Pittsburgh. And from the moment that I realized that I wasn't all right, I started analyzing myself daily. And I recognized or when I would forget where I put something or forget why I walked across the room to the refrigerator, I recognized that, and I would highlight that in my mind as a moment. And I went to him, I'm going to him through this process and telling him everything. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. And man, the other day I did this, the other day this happened, the other day I turned my head and I felt this, and I forgot this and forgot that. And he's like, you can't put every single thing that happens in the concussion bin. Just because you forgot where your keys were doesn't mean that's a concussion-related thing. Some things are just going to happen. People forget names and birthdays and things they said they were going to do all the time. Yeah. And I needed to stop analyzing every day and sort of tracking every day as this sort of, trying to understand the metrics of wherever, if am I improving. And so I kind of, I am forgetful. Is that related to my concussions? Maybe not entirely. I laughed the other day. I told somebody, I said, I can't tell you. They were asking me about something that we did the day before, and I go, I don't really remember what that was. I'll tell you in about a year. I was like, I can remember that happened a year ago or 2 years ago, but I can't remember things that happened in the last week. But those things I'll remember in a year. Just laughing. Not that that's really true, but I feel like that. And again, I'm no expert, but as you and I get older, we are less likely to, as when we're younger, our mind is constantly recording every day, everything we do, we think, every conversation we have, every moment, every song we hear. Our minds are just this processor that's just recording and downloading all this information and storing it away. And as we get older, we do that less, just out of habit. We're less likely to be memorizing and downloading and recording and processing and storing away every single thing we do all day long, because we realize that that's not that important.
Well, it's true.
And so if you said, man, remember what you said yesterday? And I don't get all that bent out of shape about it, because I didn't, in the moment when I did it, I didn't file it away as something very important. Because we've tuned ourselves to only file away the things that are critical. And, I don't know. I think that now there are some things that are real, there are some symptoms and issues that are real. And I'll tell you this, I am not the same version. I'm not, I kind of call myself, this is 2.0. There was that one version before the wreck, and now there's this version. And
I think 100%.
Right. And that I just had to come to terms with, right? That not everything was I wasn't going to be as sharp or as elite or as I wanted to be. And another thing I'll tell you too, and I think you can appreciate this, it's like when we're racing a car every single week, all of those senses are so perfectly finely tuned.
They are.
And when you get out of that rotation and you no longer do it day in and day out, you can't, when you do go back and get behind the car, you see that 5 or 3 or 4% that's not there.
Yep.
That the other guys have, the other guys that are doing it every single week, you don't have it. You don't, and you're not gonna.
And the one thing I don't have a problem is actually being in a car.
Yeah.
And I think you got to concentrate so hard.
Yeah.
That
forces you.
It forces you to just stay on track, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes under caution, you find yourself like, get back. I'd rather go back green now.
Yeah.
And so I did have that problem in a car, and I don't have the problem if I trip. I remember reflexes are still very good.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what area that it is, but I'll get a horrendous headache, and that I never used to have before, ever. I mean, it's probably just started in the last 3-4 years. You would get that, but only for a short minute. But God, it feels like your head's getting cut off, and then it kind of goes away. And it I've had my times to walk across the shop to get something and
not know what you went over there for.
Yeah, and then you get back, and then you go, oh crap, what the hell? What was I even looking for? And then I have to think of what I was doing, because I may have 2 or 3 different things going on, and from building cars and all the machining, your head's always rotating, and because I still always have this great ideas for some of a race car to do. But I don't want to put the energy into it now. I'm at I think the last outlaw car I had, man, that thing, it was just wicked fast. And there's some things that I think they do to make it even better. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go through the energy to do it.
Yeah.
It's just, and I just feel weird about, okay, let's get somebody to do it for you. but it never works that way.
No.
Not necessarily really in tune to what's going on.
Mm.
But I do enjoy those aspects of things of the racing, and I think that's what keeps me playing and keeps me fabricating and things of that nature. Because I do like to do that.
Yeah. Well, I when in terms of the the memory and head, I feel like that I had this really great vision most of my career, and like 2010 always had really good vision. And then I had the concussions and stuff, and when he sent me to an eye doctor, I'm like, well, my eyes are great. Why do I got to see this eye doctor during this whole process? But the guy started putting glasses on me, and I picked my mom's glasses up one day, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know my vision was steering off in the wrong direction, but it is. And so now I wear glasses all the time. And he's like, you were probably, I was so disappointed in that, man, this wreck and this injury has messed up my vision. I really was going to have great vision all my life. I loved being able to read and see everything. And now I got to wear glasses, and without glasses, I'm literally useless, right? If I sit on the couch with Amy and I don't have my glasses on, she's like, check us out on my phone. I'm like, I can't see shit. And so I hate that. But my doctor's like, you were going to get this way. He's like, this accelerated it a little bit, but you were going to do this. And so it's kind of similar with the memory, and like, isn't my memory as sharp as I think it should be? No. But it was probably, this is likely an aging process anyways. Maybe it's a little more profound. But I do that too. I'll walk across the shop when I'm working at the shop, and walking across there for a particular bid or something like that, and a tool or whatever, and get over there and go, what the hell was I? What did I need?
Sometimes it comes back in 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 days. You know, that's
yeah.
And that's probably the best way to look at it. It's usually nothing bothers me.
No,
I don't really dwell on it, but it was like there's certain things that are just,
the headache thing would be something. But I'm in a place personally where I no longer recognize moments as going, oh, that's a concussion related thing. I never do. I'm thankful for that. My doctor told me, he's like, quit analyzing yourself, quit putting everything in this concussion bin, thinking that you're this damaged goods, and everything that happens that you don't do perfectly goes in this concussion box. And I'm like, all right, I'll stop. And finally, I go through days where I don't even think about it. And I'm not like reminded that, oh, yep, that's something I went through. Right, and now but there are some moments. But if I was having some pain, that would drive me right back to the doctor. Like, I would probably say, hey, I'm feeling physical pain, and I just want an MRI or something to get in there and look around.
Yeah. And it seems odd. It's so long. I mean, that wreck was in 2009.
I know.
And then why all of a sudden is it doing that?
I agree. But that happens. Not the same thing, but my last real issue with concussions happened in 2016, and the wreck that I had that triggered it was 2 months before. Like, I had wrecked. I knew when the wreck happened that I'd gotten my bell rung, but I was like, I'll be good in a couple of days. I went on and raced for 2 months with no issue, perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden I started realizing my vision was getting blurry, and my eyes I felt a ton of pressure behind my eyes and all these things. And I'm like, I must have allergies. I don't have allergies, never had in my life, but this is what it sounds like. And I'm just talking to people, and they're like, oh yeah, probably allergies. And, finally we got it all figured out and diagnosed. But the issues, I always felt like you get a concussion, or you have a concussion from a moment that, an impact or a thing that just happened. Somebody hit you upside the head with a bat, concussion, right? But sometimes there's these lingering effects that can come out of nowhere from months or even years after an incident, right? As our bodies are always changing and evolving. But if you're uncomfortable or having any kind of pain, I would certainly think, all right, let's get in front of this. Could be something completely unrelated to concussions.
Because I knew I had a bad concussion, and it was, but because I was out of the race car so long, just from surgeries and fixing everything,
You had a good
I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had that vertigo there for the first week or something like that. Every time you wanted to get up or something like that.
Yep.
But that went away pretty quick. And
Yeah.
even after I did get back in racing, I couldn't feel that. I couldn't feel that. That was fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably just old age. Maybe I'm trying to claim it on something.
Yeah, you're putting everything in the concussion bin. You're just getting old.
I know it, right?
Yeah, and like that headache could be unrelated entirely to this wreck. You have no idea.
Might be. Yeah, I have no idea.
We're quick to make assumptions, and me and you were mechanical minds that we want to connect things and make things make sense, right?
I know it. That's a bad habit.
Yeah, it is. Well, look, let's see. 62 years old. I know that she may not love this, but I think you got one more. You got a couple laps left in the tank.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're in great health. You look awesome.
I'm in good health. I think at least.
You must pay attention and, for the most part, try to do a good job.
It got to the point that everybody fluctuates on all their stuff, right? And it was, the Cup cars. Yeah, they're hot. Every race car's hot. The open wheel car, not so much. They're still warm. And they're still hot, but the physical aspect of driving one of those cars, I've never experienced that before. It just, I can't even. Where did we run? I ran Toledo, and I think we ran a truck race, and I come over there. It was a 40-lap race. It goes green. The car's a little loose. I started like 12th or so. And with those cars, somebody was running a little heavy on their fuel. With methanol, it just burned your eyes, And all of a sudden, I was like, I couldn't breathe because those cars you can't breathe in the corners, so you're constantly trying to adjust your breathing
because of the loads.
Just because.
Oh my gosh!
And so I was like, I'm ready to pull off track.
Yeah,
that's only a 40-lap race, and I'm like, man. And I looked up at the board and I go, it was lap 32. I go, well, I can run 8 more laps without breathing. And of course, I got to the end and jammed the belts off. And I think that seat in that car didn't quite fit quite perfect. But anyways, I'm looking at the board and it's got 74 up there. And that don't make any sense for third or something like that. And the 3 of us have to stop on a start and finish line. So I stopped up there. Brad comes up there all happy as, man, if we had a caution, you'd have won this race. And I go, dude, he had no idea. I almost pulled off the track at lap 32. And I was like, man, I'm either just so out of shape. But then when Kyle Busch had to have the Rowdy 250, well, I was racing that on Wednesday. I was scared to death going into this race. I thought, geez, I just barely made it through this 40-lap race with the Super.
Yeah.
And I got there and we ran that, and I think finished third. And I was like, God, I could run 5 of these. So just a 50-lap race, one of those things are insane.
Yeah.
They're just, you get, if the car's not quite white, it'll absolutely wear you out.
I bet.
And so you kind of try to stay ahead of that.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're fun.
Well, man, let's stay in touch, man. I didn't know you were still down this way. And we got a lot of great things going on in the Cars Tour and around racing in general. And we'd love to have you out to see
I'm at least now I'm going to go do some of these races.
Yeah. Come visit us and just kind of see what we're doing.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, dude, it's fun and it's close. All our races were within, most of them were within 3 hours of drive.
I like working with Tony Erie.
Yes.
With Danica and stuff like that. Yep. And I think I did some stuff with some breaks with them, and of course seeing them at the SRX. So yeah, there's. I'm going to keep obviously on your schedule. I see you racing somewhere. We'll probably sneak over and see how it's going.
Yeah, come check us out. All right, buddy. Thank you very much for today. It was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Johnny Benson Jr. on the Dale Jr. Download. Hey, this is Dale Earnhardt Jr., and for all the latest Dale Jr. Download gear, including the I'm Drink Some Beer t-shirt that we've been talking about here around the office, head over to shop.dirtymomedia.com for all the latest merch. All right, Johnny Benson. That's a fun conversation. I love obviously that he had this career in NASCAR, and then he went back and ran a lot of short track races since then in the last decade or so. And even like right now, like he's very, matter of fact, I don't know, man. I wonder if way down in there there's if he's like hiding his true like emotion around things, but like he doesn't seem too upset or bothered by things that didn't go his way on the Cup side or the NASCAR side of things. And he, he's just like, yeah, I'll just go back and do this. I'll just go back and do this. I'll just go do this. I'm just going to go do this. Yeah, I don't know, kind of envious of his lack of emotion in terms of the frustrations or the disappointments, and every one of us has faced at some point in time in our careers. But he it's a champion, man. Busch Series champion 95, 2008 Truck Series champion, 1993 ASA national champion, and a lot of Hall of Fames. He's had a very robust career, man. I think a lot of people really appreciate him. I enjoyed that conversation, man. I'm surprised we hadn't had him in here sooner, but that was a good one. So we're grateful for Johnny coming through the Arby's studio today. Don't forget about Arby's new meat and 3 box. Get more meal for your money at Arby's. We have the meats, and we'll see you tomorrow.